Welcome to the Conduit Deeper podcast, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the details that surround our current sermon series, from current events to fascinating finds to conversations that take us deeper into the Word. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Deeper Podcast. My name is Mo, executive pastor at Conduit Church, joined with our lead pastor, Darren Tyler, which is our first episode of 2026.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy 2026. We say this every year, but it sounds more ridiculous every year that goes by that we're saying the year 2026 because it feels like it just turned 2000.
Yeah.
So now we're 26 years past that. It's like, what happened?
Right. So how old would you have been in like 2020?
20.
Okay. So younger than Micah.
Younger
Right.
than my son and producer Caleb as well.
So remember how we thought like about 1976, like when you were 20? That's how I think our kids think about 2000, the year 2000. We think it's like last year, and they're like, it's actually part of their history books now.
Yeah, they weren't even born.
Yeah. Yeah, like when I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s, like, you know, all these Vietnam movies, Rambo, it felt like a whole other world, like, because I wasn't old enough to remember it. But now I realize, like when they talk about 9/11, Iraq War, like those things are like, for them, that's a history thing. They don't attach it to, so.
Yeah, so 1974 would have been the same distance to the year 2000.
74, yeah.
As 2026 is to the year 2000.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So we took a little time off, couple weeks of break from Christmas and New Year's, as a lot of people did, travel and families and holidays and food and everything else like that. Then we also launched into, right after the first of the year, so this is day 7 of 2026, sorry. Day 7, a week ago, we launched a simple, quick campaign to read through the Bible in 90 days for those that wanted the challenge for the first 3 months of this year. Okay, so we're 7 days in. How are you holding up? Are you on track?
I'm ahead of schedule.
I mean, of course you are.
It's actually been really fun. There's just under 450 people that signed up, so we have 3 groups going.
That's a chunk.
Mm-hmm.
That's serious. That's serious commitment, actually.
It is, and they are really active in the comments and after each day, as you end it, there's hey, talk it over. What'd you get from this? And I'm gonna have to have Anna change my notifications because my inbox is just blowing up.
Yeah, you need to turn those off.
So and so commented. So and so commented. So and so. When I had her set it up, I thought there'd be like 100 people, so it'd be, but 450, which is awesome.
I am not one of those 450.
I've noticed. Yeah.
I opted out of that one because I'm championing the 21 days of prayer and fasting, which is another initiative that we're launching this Sunday. So a quick plug for that. If you haven't signed up for our 21 days of prayer and fasting, there's time. It starts this Sunday, runs through the end of January. You can just text DEVO 2026 to 97,000. So that's DEVO 2026 to the number 97,000, and that'll get you a daily Devo and video as we do a 3-week prayer and fasting through January. Those two things combined through our church family, and we're going to have another, probably 700-800 people doing that as well. Some are doing both. I wonder how many are actually doing both.
I'll bet a lot because, reading the Bible and praying are both a part of our lives. And so these are not like disparate goals, right, together. In fact, I talked about that on Sunday, like praying in the Spirit. 2 of the services, I forgot to say this. I'm going to say it now. That praying in the Spirit, which is the verse that immediately follows the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And he says, and praying for always in the Spirit. And the question of what is praying in the Spirit mean? And there are plenty of other verses in the New Testament talk about a prayer language, all that, but that's not what this one's talking about. Because the sword of the Spirit is the Word of God. So praying in the Spirit is simply just praying the Word of God.
Yeah.
Back. So I'm reading the Psalms as a prayer. I'm, a lot of the younger generation right now that's being attracted to like orthodoxy and Catholicism, they like the written prayers, the written schedules, and the homilies and all that stuff. But I've said this a lot, like they want to go back to the beginning, but if you go back to that, you've gone 300 years into after Jesus. So if you want to go to the beginning, go to the beginning. And so what they were praying wasn't like homilies written in a prayer book. They were praying the scriptures, praying Psalms, Proverbs, all that. So when, a lot of people don't, what do I say when I pray? Pray the word, pray Ephesians. In fact, the first two chapters is all these prayers that Paul was praying for others. And if nothing else, just pray those and put someone's name in there with it. So anyway, yeah, prayer and word side by side, spirit and truth, is 100% a biblical idea. So I'm excited. We talked about that we needed to double down on discipleship, and we started that with our young kids, and realizing that parents need to be in this too. Like, they can't outsource their spiritual development of their children to us. And so inviting in, and there's tons of new people, tons of new families, names I don't even recognize, that are digging in with us. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this affects our church as a whole, with us challenging, celebrating people really being responsible, with, like you said, with their own equipment. Like, they're not showing up to practice without their equipment. They're not showing up to the game without their practice. So.
Yeah, we're prepared. And, we're starting off the first of the year, so everybody's got a lot of goals. Everybody's kind of focused in, spiritual goals. We have some, obviously, Bible reading goals, some fasting goals. It's funny how the flip of the calendar, all you're really doing is just turning a page.
Yeah.
And some would say time is a construct. So but it's funny how just the flip of the year really does bring focus in. And another thing that we've experienced this past Sunday was, our room overflowed with people.
Yeah.
It's I've joked about this in the past, but January at church is a lot like gym memberships. If you try to go to a gym right now, it's full.
Yeah. Wait till February.
Yeah. Wait till February, or March. And so with that, when we experienced just 4 really full services, and unfortunately one service we had to turn cars away. And so one of the ways we're trying to combat that is to RSVP. And so we've launched that for this Sunday. If you're a regular Conduit and you're listening and you're watching, we want to invite you to register for one of our 4 services that we're going to be having this Sunday and for the next several weeks. January and August are our peak attendance months.
Yeah, you can literally set your watch by that. Speaking of time, like
Absolutely.
That's going to happen.
Yeah,
and when you register if you're a part of our Conduit family, and if you're listening to this deeper, you're most likely part of our core families. When we say we're making room for one more, we're not just making room for one more for a family that might have been at a church somewhere else. They weren't really happy there. We're talking literally every Sunday, people are making first-time decisions. So we're not saying let's make room for one more in Conduit. We're saying let's make one more in the kingdom. And that means you could literally take a mission trip without even leaving your home, or without leaving your town. You don't need a passport for this one. Just come to the 8 a.m. And if you're, again, part of our core family, 8 a.m. isn't a part of your rhythm. Could you make it part of your rhythm for at least the next 30 to 60 days, just to give us this breathing room in the 945? And registration is not something that, we started doing this before COVID, which was kind of helpful for us because our people were kind of already aware of that. But this is the building that we've been given, and given debt-free. So this is what we have. This is what God gave us. So when we say we need to make room for one more, we're not saying like leadership fix this problem. We're saying we as a church can, solve this problem. And it's really as simple as, I know the 945, I know our culture, but could you at least for a couple of months say, I'm going to make a sacrifice and come to the 8 a.m. That would be such a gift for our team, but really a gift for those. We don't know who got turned away. I know one family, it was a mom, hadn't been to church. They'd been watching online. They finally got here. She had all of her, and like a lot of kids. And, she understood. She wasn't mad, but I was like, man, I was so sad about that. Like, her and her family got turned away. We just didn't have room for them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's super easy to RSVP. You can do it through the Church Center app if you've got that, or you can go through our website, ConduitChurch.com. You can find it pretty easily. I very much appreciate those already registering this morning when we launched that. So thank you for doing that. It really will help out. We want this to kind of be a bit of a current events recap. There's a lot that's happened in the past couple of months. Maybe we haven't had a real chance to dive in. Shoot, a lot has happened in the past couple of weeks.
I was going to say, just this week.
Past couple of days. There's a couple of news items that have happened in the past couple of hours, actually. So, I felt, we feel like it's important to talk about current events, to try to bring clarity to the chaos. That's kind of been our mantra the past 5.5 years that we've done this podcast, that we take all of the things that are happening globally, try to make some sense of it. We're not experts on the topic, but I feel like we're well informed and well read. But ultimately, and most importantly, we're taking these things and filtering them through the lens of Scripture.
Exactly, right. We're letting the Word interpret the world. And that we are experts in. We know the Bible.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, even inside, when we talked about Christless conservative, the movement that was happening there, like we're seeing a lot of those chickens come home to roost right now, which is interpreting world events through conservative principles, not through biblical principles. And every biblical principle is a conservative one, but not every conservative principle is a biblical one. And, the coalitions needed for voting, all that makes sense. But we as believers, even though there are certain segments of our culture that we would agree with as far as voting, so like the Mormons, we would vote the same probably as them. But theologically speaking, we are not the same. They are not Christians. It is a other gospel than the gospel of Jesus. But then reverse engineering that to even, we're seeing a lot of the Christless conservative worlds, talking about how Islam isn't all that bad. They don't like gay marriage either. So we should be okay with Islam in our country. That's bananas.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. What do you think is the biggest Christless conservative talking point? What's the largest conservative talking point that's not biblical?
I mean, would you consider what's Tucker Carlson has been talking about with Islam a big, because I can't figure out if anybody's actually believing him.
It doesn't feel like a mainstream conservative talking point.
It doesn't, right?
So I'm not sure why he's dancing on the edges with that.
Yeah, it's very, very strange that, he referred to Islam as not being a great threat to us, and that's just a Mossad, Israeli. He didn't use the word psyop, but saying that that we don't need to be worried about Islam. We're in America. He didn't use the word racist, but he's talking about. He's literally sounded like Ilhan Omar, like talking about Islam. But here's the thing: Islam isn't a race; it's a religion. So speaking against against Islamic principles in our country is not racist at all. That is as biblical as it gets. And by the way, common sense as it gets. There is no freedom in these Islamic countries, none. Qatar included. There's 300,000 people in that country that are actually considered Qatari. The rest are immigrants from all over. It's like the UN. When you fly Qatar Airlines, it's Africa, Philippines, but that's because there are not enough people in Qatar to actually do the job. So they're importing people, but you can't have a church there. There's no open, Christians are not, it's not legal there. There's no freedom in that. So to celebrate Islam as if it's another conservative idea. So I don't know, would that?
No, I think I think he's on the fringe of that.
Okay.
I think
that's comforting, by the way.
Yeah.
I hope you're right.
I think, well,
it's bananas.
I think what could be even more dangerous, though, is in the conservative movement, a talking point that is gaining steam that is not biblical is the pejorative of the word Zionism.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So over the past year, the past 6 months, it's pejorative to say, and it's just anti-Semitic to say that, that Israel is, it's anti-biblical. That they think it is, that Israel is, the Jews are God's people, the chosen ones.
Yeah.
Like that idea, that biblical idea that we've talked about, that we support, just the fact that we support Israel, and we've talked about this at length, but that continues to gain ground in the conservative movement, that should be cast away or put aside.
Yeah. I actually 100% agree with that, because it is more mainstream. It's not disconnected from Islam, because part of what you have to, if you're going to be anti-Israel, you have to, or I don't know if they have to, but they sure are diminishing all of the evils of Islam, because it's still radical Islam. I mean, that's exactly what happened on October 7th, right? They were radical Islamic fundamentalists doing what they read in the Quran, which is there. I mean, it's not, it's not an arguable point. That is, you can justify anything that they are doing with the Quran. It's one of the differences, by the way, with Christianity. We talk about the Crusades, and they were just as bad. And first of all, there's a little bit of a revisionist history with it, but you cannot read the teachings of Jesus and come away thinking, well, I need to kill all the infidels. So anybody that does do that, they are not following Jesus. Anybody that in Islam that is not killing infidels is not following the teachings of Islam. So you can justify it in Islam, you cannot in Christianity. But with Israel, I 100% agree, because it's not, I'm used to the era of the debate over, did the church replace Israel? Those are theological debates, and there are some really smart people that think that. I'm not one of them. I literally can't get there just because of Romans 11. Like you have to ignore that. But what it's expanded into is, like, for instance, one of those doctrines of that is that the people in Israel now, they're not even real Jews. There's no DNA there's no Jews left, which is, if that were accurate, then everything in Ezekiel, it's all false then, because there is a literal Jerusalem, a literal Jesus, and a literal Mount of Olives with literal Jews. So to say that you're saying the Bible is wrong and Tucker Carlson's right? Candace Owens is right and Tucker, and the Bible is wrong, and that is 100% not with me or anybody. We're not going to. We choose the Word of God over the word of a podcaster, and where we are now with Iran, with the one thing that, even if you remove all of the biblical lens of it, even, and then just go to the common sense part of it, Iran's been super clear what they want to do to us. We're the big Satan, and Israel has been a one little, grasp of freedom in that little, the giant Middle East. There's this little sliver of freedom, of democracy in Israel. And they have, by taking out Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, they're doing what we can't do, which is stemming the tide of that with it. So even without the biblical, just the geopolitical thing, it's just bizarre to me.
Yeah, I just think it's something to keep our finger on the pulse of. I think we're going to talk a lot more about it this year.
Yeah.
The conservatives that are aligning themselves, that are anti-Jew, anti-Israel.
Yeah.
I think that's growing. And that's something we're going to have to address in 2026 even more specifically.
Yeah.
But as it pertains to Islam, though, like, we're seeing what happened over the very first of the year, which was Zohran Mamdani being sworn in officially as New York's mayor.
Put his hand on the Quran, and Bernie Sanders swearing him in. Wild.
Yeah, wild scene. Something that I don't think, speaking of 2001, 2002, I don't think anyone would have ever guessed after the events of 9/11 that someone like Mamdani would be the mayor of New York City.
Yeah.
Clearly Islamist, very socialist, pushing Marxist and communist ideas, and voted in overwhelmingly.
Yeah. Yeah, that, like the law, the executive order, whatever he just passed, that if you own property, the video of this girl that's like his director of like rent or something like that.
His housing aide, Zia Weaver.
Good Lord. Even when she's talking, like, oh, he's got one of those.
You know what? She's a Nashville kid. Do you know that?
No, I did not. Seriously?
Yeah, she's from here. Vanderbilt, of course.
I mean, the policy that they announced, I think it's the COPA is what it's called, the law that you own a home, you want to sell it now. You got to make it available first of right of refusal or whatever. You got to make it first to a nonprofit. And that's a 30-day process. And then it's like, if they don't, then you got to go to the government. And I can't remember how long they have, but then they get to decide whether they want it or not. And, and if they do, they have to buy it at, quote, market value. And of course, you decide it's market value. But the guy that, says that I'm going to give away free soccer tickets to the World Cup, which he has no real, anyway, you've got that 60 days, whatever. And then if the state refuses, then you can sell it, but then the state has an opportunity, first right of refusal. I mean, if you own a house in Tennessee, imagine it taking a year just to get through the process of putting your property that you paid money for sale. And they're not only not hiding it, they're very proud of this as an idea that this is going to help people. And this is exactly what happened in Venezuela. The government took over everything.
Yeah.
The grocery stores, I mean, and all they ended up with was nothing with it. And so
she, the reason she's championing this is because she believes, quote unquote, that private property, including any kind of especially home ownership, private property of any kind, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy, quote unquote. Now, this is a white female liberal from Nashville.
Yeah.
And this is her quote. And then in 2016, she said, it's important that white people feel defeated. She's part of the whole DEI movement. And and he hired her on. 2018, she said, we need to impoverish the white middle class. And they are stating that they intend to, want to, or trying to raise taxes on the richest and whitest neighborhoods in New York, around New York City.
Unbelievable.
So I don't know how this will pan out. I mean, we know how it'll pan out if it plays out. But as far as public outcry, they got voted in. So this is what they want. There's going to be consequences to this.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that's a short tail. I don't think it'll last long.
Yeah. Yeah, when you think about the play that he just made on property actually causes it, it's going to be really hard for the people that want to leave if you own something there. Business owners, are now being subjected to that. And I still think they're going to leave. I think this is a California 2.0. But
yeah, they're expecting 1.2 million New York City regulars to leave. And 1.2 million, half of which are expected to go to Tennessee, the other half Florida.
Oh my goodness. So all those houses they're building down where I live.
Might be some New York City folks.
Dude, I remember when we sold our farm I think I told you this, in College Grove, the guy that bought it was from New York.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't know the difference between a bush hog, a mower, nothing. But he was just gobsmacked that he sold his apartment and this is 2015 or 4, whatever it was, he sold his apartment for like $1.2 million. He bought our farm, a 4,000 square foot home, 5 acres, a stream, the whole thing for like, I think it was $700. And he was giddy.
Sure.
About it, because now imagine even though our housing prices have gone up, but getting out of New York right now, coming here, no state income tax, gas is infinitely cheaper.
Reconcile for me, because he's Islamic, obviously.
Yeah.
This Muslim religion is what he touts. How does that religion align with Marxist ideas?
Yeah, that's a really astute question. There is no concept of freedom in the Quran. There is no concept of democracy in Islam. It's a state-controlled, across the board. It's a theocracy. That's the goal of Islam in general. Whether it's Iran or Morocco, there's no concept of a separation where the state has no control over religion and everything else in your life. So it actually bootstraps really well with Islamic principles.
Interesting.
It's not, people we take for granted that the idea of freedom is something that is innate in human nature. It's not. That was a Judeo-Christian idea. That comes from Sinai, not from Paris, not from Mecca. The French Revolution was a whole different one, secular, and then the Islamic revolutions have been all about theocracy. But the one thing they have in common is freedom is not innate to them. We take for granted that we celebrate life, that all life is valuable. That's a Judeo-Christian principle. It's not a secular principle. You can't get that from the French Revolution, and you can't get that from Islamic revolution. So they 100% would disagree on most of the liberal, progressive. It was one of the things that Tucker was saying about Islam. Well, they don't like gay marriage, and maybe that's why we ousted Maduro, so we could, with the global homo, whatever movement he's talked about, which is bananas. But it actually bootstraps really nicely together, which is why when you look back to like World War II, like the the Ottomans or whatever, they were siding with the fascists, not with freedom, because they more closely align with their ideology.
You mentioned Venezuela. Let's catch up on that. Over the week, we had a strategic, maximum efficiency extraction of Maduro, who was pretending to be the president of Venezuela.
Right.
He's been a leader there for a couple decades.
Yeah.
In some form or fashion. Rigged elections, like legitimately rigged elections, an authoritarian, drug smuggling, government corruption gone wild, of what was one of the most, probably still is, but on the wrong side of it, most wealthy Central America? Southern American countries in the world, rich with resources.
Yeah.
And the U.S. went and snuck him out in the middle of the night. Primary reason was for the charges of drug trafficking. That was the primary reason. He had been he had charges placed on him in 2020. I'm sorry, a few years ago. Obviously, that he never showed up for.
Yeah.
And so they said, "Okay, well, you need to show up to your arraignment." And so that's a pretty big deal. To extricate a leader in this way,
A massive deal.
Explain why it's a massive deal.
Well, first of all, it's massive because this is almost unheard of. Like, they got in and out with no loss of American life. This is not like a Haitian regime. They actually have a military. They have police. In fact, he I want to say 60 or 70 of his personal security were actually from Cuba. Cuban guards that were Castro guys. But for us to get in and out of there in less than 4 hours total, I mean, we just showed the world that somehow we had control over their electrical grid. We had control over their internet. We had drones. We had manless aircraft, whatever those are called, and got in and out without. And actually got him, by the way. And no American lives were lost. No helicopters crashed. I mean, it put the world on notice that we're not screwing around. And the massive part to me is, I mean, we talk about the UN, is this illegal, all that, the UN is at best impotent. They sit around and have meetings and write condemnations, but they are useless when it comes to something like this. And to me, the big picture right now, when I think about who knows what's 100% on President Trump's mind, but when you think so Greenland and Venezuela, they're not detached from each other. If what it seems like he's doing is bolstering our homeland. So if you're thinking America first, this is an America first move, meaning that Venezuela, Brazil, Ecuador, China has been economically invading these countries unhindered for decades. They own two of the main ports at the Panama Canal. This has been 12 years ago, they started using US dollars, from our value to buy up like oil assets in Brazil. Like they've been building out a strategic strength in that they control the oil, they control the minerals that are needed for our electric cars, our batteries, our phones, all that technology. And Venezuela is rich with those types of resources as well. So for us to basically say we're putting our continent, this North and South America, getting rid of all of the crazies so that we have a strength here against what is probably, I wouldn't say imminent, but China's been very purposeful with this stuff. And they have been unhindered by any administration, Biden, Obama, Bush, while they've been out there literally using the money that we're spending over there to basically strengthen themselves. We've talked about it in Africa ad infinitum, what they've been doing there. But they've been doing the same thing in Central and South America for 2 decades with it. So to me, the massive thing that's happening right now is it seems as if what Trump is doing is, yes, it is going to help us because the narco trade, the smuggling, the drugs, that has been financing Venezuela because we put embargoes on their oil. Now, China has still been using oil. They've been actually getting paid in oil instead of dollars from Venezuela. They're working around some of their embargoes that way. But this definitely put China on notice and Russia on notice that we're strengthening the homeland.
Yeah, I believe this is not just about the drug trafficking. I think that is just the tip of the spear. That was reason enough to go in. And if you have any questions as to whether or not this was a good idea for the Venezuelan people, just go look at the celebrations that are happening in Venezuela by the people that live there.
Yeah. Yeah, the protests are made up in America of pretty much, white, middle-aged, pasty women who probably have a lot of cats.
Oh, man.
But you'll see the protests against them, and then side by side in New York, the Venezuelans are cheering it on, and the white people,
Yeah, I mean, they've had to run for their lives.
Yeah.
There's the corruption's been so bad that it's taken money away from food, it's taken away from education, it's taken away from housing, all of the things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do believe, honestly, this has more to do, big picture, with China and Russia. I don't know if you saw this morning, but a Venezuelan tanker that was flagged Russian, like there's Russian flags on it, tried to escape the Caribbean area, like just north of Venezuela, like it was leaving port.
Wow.
And the U.S. said no. And so they boarded this bad boy with helicopters. They took it over. They took over the vessel.
Yeah.
So now we've got a little provocation with Russia.
Yep.
They may be willing to let that go for the sake of what's happening over in Ukraine. I guess the big picture is all of it's connected. There's so many moving parts, and for somebody to say that it's just this one thing, and then the reason for this is just a one-to-one, it's not. There's layers and layers to this that are global.
100%. And with that, the big picture of we've got China, who's they've really made no secret about what they want to accomplish. And historically, I mean, the art of war, Sun Tzu, all that, like economic invasion is actually puts these regimes in their back pocket and gives them, like, for instance, just like if Maduro is still there and some kind of war breaks out with Venezuela, of course, with America, then Venezuela, all those countries that they're in are now beholden to China, for their land, for their military. So punching back at that, I'm not a big fan. But it's just me. What does my opinion matter? But of us, randomly doing regime changes, we've never been very good at that, whether it's Panama, Noriega, whatever. But at the same time, doing nothing is not a good plan either. And, I 100% didn't see this coming. I wasn't on my bingo card at all.
Yeah.
And now looking at it going, oh, it is. And I see why we would do this. And the fact that we did it with such excellence is remarkable. Now we got to, there's the what's next, right? I don't know how Venezuela, because it should be the richest country in South America. It was. But as is always the case with socialism, the rich there get richer and the poor get even more poor. Like millions of people starving slowly in their homes. There's no food in these government-owned stores, lines around the corner, and it's socialism 101.
And the most popular religion in Venezuela is Roman Catholic.
Yeah, Catholicism.
So it's like, okay, this authoritarian corruption, Marxism kind of knows no bounds. No. It can attach itself to anything, because at the end of the day, we live in a Genesis 3 world where there's sin and death and corruption and greed at great depths, especially at high levels of leadership when in the wrong hands. And so that's why we have to protect that's why it starts with protecting our own hearts and our own families and our own cities, our own churches from the inside out, that we protect ourselves from these ideologies that are persisting.
Yeah. And inside of Catholicism, I think it's a Catholic idea. There's a thing called liberation theology. I don't know if you remember this pastor in New York that was Obama's pastor that went viral before it was even a thing, when he's like, God bless America. No, God damn America. Like, he was just going on and on and on. But that's liberation theology, which is based in we care for the poor at all costs. And again, we've said this before, but whether you're that Catholic, whatever, we identify the same problem, right? Which is poverty. We identify the problem, crime, or whatever. It's just that our solution is different, and it's not a small distinction. And so, liberation theology, which is, again, I fact check me, born in a Catholic ideology of caring for the poor, then moves to, no peace, no justice, or no justice, no peace. All that is born out of that we'll do this at any cost. You can justify harming people if they stand in your way, because it's cloaked in virtue. And so Catholicism on that route, which, by the way, was Obama's, he was his pastor. So liberation theology was a theology that Obama had subscribed to. And it's not Christianity at all. It's a very socialist. The government is the solution, and God will use the government, and we're the government to do it. So, yeah, even back to the idea that we can't talk about politics because we're evangelical Christians and we're not supposed to. Liberation theology doesn't think that. Islam doesn't think that. We're naive to think that.
Yeah, Islam definitely doesn't think that. In the news this week as well, Somali man from Ohio, Columbus specifically, said, America will become a Muslim state. Our goal is to make America Islamic.
Yeah.
Came from a Somalian in Columbus after being called out for a lot of the fraud around these childcare centers in Minneapolis and in Columbus specifically. The top 3 cities or regions with the highest density population of Somalians is number 1, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yep.
Number 2, Columbus, Ohio.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And number 3, Seattle. And then 4, 5, 6, and 7 are like way behind the top 3. But they're very concentrated to those 3 areas. And if you missed it, there was an independent journalist, Nick Shirley. I don't know if you follow him or not. He's a young kid.
Yeah.
He's just diving in and going after fraud, big fraud. And there seems to have been, and this isn't like a brand new thing. This has been talked about over the past 4 or 5 years. It stemmed from COVID era money that was claimed fraudulently, specifically around child care centers. He exposed a specific one in Minneapolis called the Quality Learning Center, where he stood outside of the Learning Center with a sign that was misspelled and spelled leering because they forgot the N.
Yeah.
The irony is just unbelievable.
Right.
Like, this is something like in The Simpsons or something. Yeah. Like you would see it in a cartoon. And trying to, he is exposing this deep fraud, and and then it came out again today or this morning that the Somali ambassador to the UN is linked to this fraud. He has daycare centers in Cincinnati and Columbus, Ohio. Massive fraud happening across this particular sect. Where's this coming from? Like, what is the end goal for this? Are they just stealing money just because they can, or is there something deeper that they're trying to establish here?
I mean, yeah, they had free money in their minds.
Sure.
And it's important to remember that before these videos came out, there were already ABC News reported 90 indictments for fraud in Minneapolis, the vast majority of which were to Somali companies. And so it's not like Shirley suddenly discovered this.
Right.
He was confirming what was already happening. It has been kind of funny to watch the gymnastics that the Trump derangement syndrome people are going through to, is it really fraud? Is it really, you're the journalist. Tell me, is it really fraud? That's literally your job to tell me that. And they, because they didn't, there's a, 25-year-old kid which is great. I think it's awesome that we have that kind of ability with the internet, with all the struggles and the problems the internet brings our way with social media. This has been a huge win for that, because the ABC News producers, CBS, they no longer are in between us and what's going on in the world. We don't have to trust them anymore and we shouldn't have ever, but they're not in between us. But when you go back to the Somali idea, you've got two situations. You've got the culture and the religion, and they're somewhat the same and not. But in the Somali culture, it's an honor-shame culture. It's a family culture. So when they get here, and you think of it, that's actually common sense. Like if you and I were going to move to, Central America, there's usually a gringo part of town, not because you're trying to stay separate, but because these are my people. I'm familiar with them. So when you get Somali families over here, and the Somali war, there were lots of reasons to extend invitations and welcome in people who were being starved and tortured, and at the same time, deliciously naive to think that their culture and their religion would stay in Somalia and they would adapt to our culture and faith here. And so what seems to be behind it is just what you and I would, do. Like, hey, have you heard this autopilot thing? They're just, this guy's online, he's copying all Nancy Pelosi's trades, and then other people start jumping on it because it's, and by the way, that's true, and it's worked. I've made decent money just with an autopilot. Like, just all doing is copying Nancy Pelosi trades.
Wow.
But that, this was hey, there's free money here. All you got to do is set up a daycare. You don't even have to have kids in it. And they'll give you a check with it. So if you grew up in a country and a culture where you were in abject poverty and there's money flowing to you for free, seemingly, from the government, they were all jumping on it with it. And I'm grateful that somebody finally exposed it, especially because, if you remember, Waltz was parading the fact that Minnesota has put so much emphasis and money into daycare and childcare. Like that was part of his selling point of why I'll be a great vice president, because look what we're doing for the education in our state. And then obviously he resigns from, he's not going to run for re-election because he is just flat-footed on this, just busted with it. And whether he knew or was just naive, it's impossible to know. But whether you're naive or whether you did it on purpose, the results are still the same, which is disastrous. I mean, billions of dollars unaccounted for.
Yeah, I mean, we can blame the Somalians, but it was greenlit and approved and looked the other way by Americans.
100%.
So,
and if you remember when they were handing out those quote unquote forgivable loans, and that was under the Trump administration, by the way, that we passed on it because
the PPP loans.
Is that what they were?
Yeah.
And I'm proud of many decisions we've made over the years, but I'm really proud that we said no to that. And it was unanimous with our elder board. Like we're not taking, we don't want a hook from the government.
No, never.
And really wise, smart guys, attorneys and pastors were telling me that we're dumb. This is money. They're giving it to you from the government. I'm like, yeah, but we don't want the government in our church. And this is us putting our literal money where our mouth is with that. But just that alone, when it rolled out so quickly, we could have literally applied with hardly any documentation and gotten whatever the money would have been, free money. And a lot of churches did. And, that's between them and Jesus as to whether that was the right move or not. But for us, it wasn't. And when you think about that kind of free money, fraud is of course going to happen. We shouldn't be surprised by that. These politicians being all shocked that, that there's fraud.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, again, like big picture, like this is cultures clashing.
Yes.
1% of Somalia is Christian, less than 1%. So they are 99% Sunni Muslim.
Yep.
Living in a Christian culture. America, just generally broad sweeping statement, right? And so there's ideologies that are going to continue to clash.
Yes.
And that's what we're experiencing in New York, in Minneapolis, in Columbus, and across the country is this rise of Islam.
Yeah.
Both Sunni. Is there a Shia movement?
Not that I'm aware of. It's not worldwide. There's 2 billion Muslims. 10% of them are Shia.
Okay.
And so
very concentrated.
Iran, Syria, some Iraqi. Actually, there's a lot of Shia in Iraq, but so there is that. But for the most part, it's Sunni, just based upon the sheer magnitude of numbers. 90% of the world population is Sunni Muslim, so the vast majority would be Sunni in America.
I was trying to remember if that mosque in Plano, Texas. I feel like one of those mosques that we talked about a few podcasts ago. I feel like one of them was Shia.
The one in Texas,
like a pocket of Shia somewhere.
I'm pretty sure the one in Texas was Sunni.
Yeah, there's
the housing development or whatever.
Right, it's like a city.
Yeah, the Muslim city. That's a Sunni.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got all of that going on. You've got corruption. You've got fraud, illegal aliens. Perhaps we've got actual aliens. How do you like that for a segue? There was a podcast, not a podcast. There was a documentary that came out over the past month, right before the holidays, which makes a lot of fun for dinner conversations. Called The Age of Disclosure. Have you watched this yet?
I have not. I'm so embarrassed.
Okay. The Age of Disclosure was released on Amazon Prime. I don't think it's part of your Prime subscription yet. I think you still have to purchase it to watch it. But basically, it's a high-profile documentary that includes interviews with 34 U.S. government, military, intelligence officials to talk about the global cover-up, an 80-year global cover-up of non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial craft engineering programs, secret engineering programs. And there's a lot of people talking about it. including this past week, kind of one of our friends talked about on their podcast.
Yeah.
John Bevere and his son, they do a similar podcast, kind of like what we do. And he discussed the Age of Disclosure documentary.
Did he?
So anyways, I feel like that this topic, this conversation is probably a full podcast worth.
Yeah, oh yeah.
For sure. But just kind of wanted to dip our toes in it a little bit. And I'm bummed you haven't watched it yet.
I'm embarrassed that I haven't. Shannon's going like staying a couple nights with her buddies for her birthday, so the perfect time tonight to pop open a bag of popcorn.
Dial it up.
I'll be sitting in my boxer shorts. Here's your metal picture you didn't need. Watching a documentary about aliens.
Oh, that's great. There's a lot of conversation around it, and you know, I guess what John and Arden, his son, talked about, it fell into a category that I think I expected, which is it's all alien, all the alien conversation, non-human intelligence, all these craft, etc. It's all just angels and demons, and it was kind of just summed up in like a 2-minute, summary of that's what we're dealing with here. And I just think there's more to it than that.
There very well could be. When Jesus said, as it was in the days of Noah, right, so
Yes.
it will be.
He mentioned that. He used that verse,
Did he?
which I
Okay.
appreciated.
And honestly, we might actually agree, but the understanding of angelic beings in Scripture, the simple version is angels and demons, right? But the Elohim, the divine council, these beings that fell, the Genesis 6 idea,
Cherubim,
the sons of
seraphim.
God, came and had made children with the daughters of men. Like, were they actual created entities? Were they, we don't 100% know, but we do know that in the days of Noah, right, there was seemingly the DNA of humanity was being co-opted by the quote sons of God. So if you want to use the word angels for that, then I would agree with that. And when we think about it from the normal theological standpoint, angels just sort of appear and disappear, and but I mean, it's a legitimate question. Did they drive over here? Like, did they just step through the time-space continuum? We just don't know. But
Yeah, dimensional.
But
beings.
then, when you go back to, these ancient alien shows, and they talk about the Bible, the wheel within a wheel,
Yep.
the chariot that he
Ezekiel.
rode off him with the fire, with Elijah, like there is a very good case to be made that that there's a technology, not just a theology, but a technology that they are accessing with. And eschatologically speaking, it makes sense that this would be something that would show up again on our earth. I know it's a weird thing to say. I don't have any tinfoil, but the Bible clearly talks about something that happened that was on the earth when humans were on the earth. And I appreciate that my friends from Dallas Theological Seminary that say, it was it was like the sons of Cain or whatever, like they were. But you have to really torture that verse to get there with it. And if you just pull back there is a supernatural world. There is Ephesians 6, principalities, powers, authorities, rulers, all that. There's an argument to be made that we might see some of them in real time. And as a believer, we need to know that. So that our faith isn't shattered because, if there are aliens, then maybe the Bible isn't right. Also, so that we don't end up following whoever these beings are, if there are beings at all, as if they're friendly to us. Like, they're not with that. So we definitely need to be prepared on both sides of that, for our faith and for our allegiance.
Yes. And what the reason this is getting so much attention, and there's a lot of this in the news, and there was a lot of it in the news before all this Venezuela stuff came up. You know how news cycles work. Obviously, they're quick. But
Yep.
This is going to rise back up again. There's a ton of chatter about Trump being the president to make an official disclosure statement that non-human intelligence exists and that we've had contact. And the I don't want to ruin the documentary for you, but the premise of that is that it's kind of an arms race against China and Russia to claim this, so that we can then validate and use technology that we've reverse engineered against our foes, our enemies. Anyways, it goes deep into all this, but there's a lot to kind of think through there. Speaking of crazy conversations at dinner, I have an uncle. I think I've mentioned this uncle that worked for the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And so I brought this up to him at Christmas, and it was a fascinating conversation. I had about 25 minutes to grill him with popcorn questions as fast as I could. Now, he's a believer, but worked in these departments for 25 years, just retired about 2-3 years ago. And we had a really fun conversation, of which I'm still trying to process, should I say.
Should we have him as a guest on the show?
He won't talk. He won't talk.
We could put one of those like blurry faces and gargle his voice.
He's still under non-disclosure agreements, and found out some things about Uncle. I won't even say his name that I didn't know. Didn't know that I knew he worked for the Department of Defense. I didn't know he worked for the Department of Energy. I didn't know that he was in charge of what he calls black world projects, which are, black projects that no one's supposed to know about that are not on the government books financially. I'm like, wait a minute.
What a great Christmas, man.
I've known Uncle Pete my whole life. I just said his name.
Yeah, if they'd Google it anyway, they'd figure it out.
And I just learned so much. And so it was interesting. It caused me to consider a few things, and I need to read up a little bit more. And I think all of us will. I think it'll be important for us to know how to have these conversations with an unbelieving world. Yeah. Because I think it'll be part of the return of Christ. Preceding that, the Antichrist is going to use a lot of this conversation to deceive a lot of people. Yeah. I think it's going to be important for us to know.
Yeah, it matters. And it's why eschatology does matter. It's, the idea of the preterism, that everything Jesus talked about happened already in AD 70, it sounds neat, but it's inaccurate, because there are dozens, if not hundreds, of prophetic instances in the Old Testament and declarations that have yet to be fulfilled. They were not fulfilled in AD 70. Ezekiel 37, 38, 39, like none of that has been fulfilled in real time. And so the peace that we get from that's why Paul said in Thessalonians to comfort one another with these words and talking about the return of Christ. We're used to that being a really scary, disquieting, topic, because Jesus is coming back and we're all scared. But the fact is we can have peace because we know that Jesus is coming, and all of these prophetic things and signals, and including the birth of the nation of Israel, were all prophesied. So we can actually rest in those. So to take those away, theologically speaking, it's like theological Jenga. Mm-hmm. It all falls apart when you remove that stuff from it, including, the whore of Babylon, the idea of a theocratic, a religion in working with the government, the beast and the woman rides the beast. And I think it was Dave Hunt, I can't remember, he wrote a really interesting book about 30 years ago called A Woman Rides the Beast. And he was making a case that it was the Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon. But when you read that and then you put the same exact treatment on top of Islam, the blood of the saints on their hands, wealthy, beyond imagination, all those things are very Islamic. And the idea that it's a theocracy, and at one point in the middle of the tribulation, the beast throws off the woman because, they can't, again, secular and religious. So even Islam and secular progressives, they actually cannot coexist together. Eventually one's going to win. And that's what you see in Revelation, which is this woman, the woman that rides the beast. And it's just a fascinating thought that she would be wearing a turban. Wow. And not a papal hat.
Wow.
Like it's
it's a really, you've mentioned this before, and it's a really good theory.
Yeah.
It holds water.
Especially right now when you see the insanity, we say this a lot too, when you find paradox, that's where God thrives, right? Did he choose me? Did I choose him? Yes. But when you find madness, like insanity, that's deception and that's Satan. That's like, I believe something that is blatantly, demonstrably false, and I'm believing it. So when you hear somebody like a Tucker Carlson diminishing Islam, that's madness. Like, he's way too smart to be that dumb. Then you're finding Satan in the middle of that. Whether it's between him and Jesus, whether it's possession, I don't know. I just know that I can look at that, and anybody who has any ounce of like common sense can say, well, that's crazy talk. But it is crazy talk because it's Satan talk, that we could somehow coexist with a religion that refuses to coexist with us.
Yeah, and lastly, I'll just kind of sneak this in at the end. Whether they're demeaning or diminishing Islam or demeaning Israel, we're seeing those both happen.
Yes.
And I will say, just kind of as a follow-up to a couple of our previous reels that have gone viral, our buddy in town, Candace, has backtracked quite a bit over the past couple of weeks.
You can't even call it backtracking. I
don't even know what to call it.
Gaslighting? Like, I was befuddled. Like, who is she? Like, does she not realize that the internet's forever?
Yeah. So a lot of the things that she has said regarding Charlie Kirk and TPUSA and Israel and all the things that we've made mention of, we've talked about to bring clarity to, she's walking back or basically just ignoring.
Acting like she didn't say it. I want to be remembered as the one that fought for the legacy of what?
It's wild. It's wild to see this in real time. So I just kind of wanted to mention that we've been talking, we try to pull things out of the news cycle that is getting a lot of people's attention and try to bring some clarity to it and some common sense to it. And again, through the lens of scripture. And then to be able to follow up with that, weeks or months later to say, okay, we were tracking.
Yes.
I think that's healthy.
Right. And it's why the Bible matters, right? Like, just the simple things like, if you have an accusation, this is straight Judaism and Christianity, it has to be confirmed with 2 or 3 witnesses. Like, our legal system is based on that. And that, so we can go to the Bible and say, okay, well, we know that she has not been following a scriptural idea because she's not only get 2 or 3 sources, she's barely got a source, if that. And there sure hasn't been anything credible because nothing she predicted or said was going to be has. So as far as I'm aware right now, 100% wrong on everything. Right? We're not even talking like a 60% accuracy rate. We're talking 100% inaccurate.
You can be paid millions and millions of dollars to play Major League Baseball and hit a ball 28% of the time. She's batting 0 right now. Wouldn't even make the team. But man, people continue to tune in and watch.
Yeah.
Although her podcast has plummeted from number 1 to last I saw, this was a week ago. I'm sure it's worse now, but it was down to 33 or something, 34. It was just dropping because people are like, this isn't crazy talk.
It's insanity. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe maybe her new goal is to find a new thing besides whether or not Macron's wife is a man.
Yeah.
It could be. But I just think that as believers, the sword of the Spirit, right, the armor of God, the only offensive weapon in there, we have to be in the Word. And if we really believe, and we do, that this is God's Word for us, inerrant in its original language, 100% for our reproof and correction, we have to start there. And getting in the Word is the only way, because when Jesus says, the Holy Spirit will be there, He'll remind you of all those things I've told you. But if you've not read or heard any things He told you, then there's nothing to remind you of. So we need to be in there and basing all of our decisions, all of our, even who we're putting in our minds and allowing in our minds, like, we have to have the Word of God first and then go to the world, which is 100% not what Tucker or Candace, or they're the two main voices right now, but they're not going. They're cloaking it in a Christian ideology, which is fascinating, and then going completely anti-biblical in what they're saying.
Welcome to 2026. We're off to the races. Plenty to do for the kingdom. Thank you for jumping in with us each and every week. Those that subscribe, thank you for doing that. We are heading into 2026 with a lot on our plate in terms of just like a sense of urgency for the gospel, a sense of urgency for His word. The news events paint that picture, right? Like there's work to be done. And so thank you for taking time to lock arms with us, whether it's in person on a Sunday or here on YouTube or on Spotify or iTunes or however you listen to the podcast. Thank you for doing that. It's very much an encouragement. If you've got any ideas for the show for this year, we're going to open it up. info@conduitchurch.com. If you have any prayer requests, prayer@conduitchurch.com. We want to be able to lift you up in that way as well. And then lastly, if you haven't jumped in for our 21 days of prayer and fasting, Devo 2026 to 97,000, that'll get you rolling here this next week. And so glad that you can join us for that and for joining us on this podcast.